One of my roles now is to take our whole ESG strategy and further develop it. So looking at every single aspect. In the short term, of course, we'll work on the sort of, I would call them always tactical actions that we can take to implement. And then the second phase is really how we develop the network moving forward over the next 10, 15, 20 years to achieve like net zero by 2050. So we're starting to work now in terms of how we build that network, how we're going to replace the aircraft, what's the timeline for it, what's the regulatory environment, what's the customer demand. So we'll look at all aspects and develop a roadmap for the group to achieve that over the next coming years.
We are here at the IATA World Cargo Symposium in Hong Kong. And from this conference, we bring a series of conversations, series of interviews with world's leading global air cargo leaders. With me in conversation today is David Canavan. David is the Chief Operating Officer for Challenge Group. David, great to have you for this conversation.
And great to see you again.
Thanks. David, you took up the current responsibility in Challenge Group after spending about more than 3 decades in different roles at FedEx. What attracted you to this job and what is the brief to you?
Sure. Great question. So I'd spent a long time in one industry. And then I met the guys from the Challenge Group. I met Yossi, the CEO, and we talked a lot about what he wanted to do with the business and the vision for the business. And I found it to be quite inspirational in terms of how they're growing the fleet, how they want to develop end-to-end solutions, how they want to take the business forward. And it was very clear it was a real challenge to do this. And the motto of the company was challenge accepted. So after I met the team, I flew to Malta and met with the guys in Malta as well. I really got a good feeling about the business and decided it's great. This was an opportunity worth taking on and driving forward. And it's a big shift in terms of what I was doing before.
As the Chief Operations Officer, what is your immediate mid to long-term priorities in Challenge Group?
So the group consists of 3 AOCs, a handling business, a technics business, and a logistics business. And the role of the Chief Operating Officer in the mission is to standardize the systems and processes across the business units, standardize the culture, and really get the business ready for future growth and development. The business has grown exponentially in the last couple of years through COVID times, and now it's going to grow. We're going to go from 4 aircraft to 10 aircraft this year, and then beyond that in 2025, 26. So it's a real aggressive growth plan, real ambitious growth plan. So my role is to make sure that we execute on the plan very effectively and efficiently, drive new systems and processes, create new products, and really make it the integrator of complex cargo is really the ambition for the company, for the group.
How challenging do you think is the role that you have of managing different aircraft being deployed under 3 different AOCs? As of now, you have 4 747 that is operating across 2 different AOCs, then you have 76 operating in another AOC. According to you, what is the biggest challenge for you?
Sure. Well, now we have 5 747s. We have 2 more 767s coming in the summer. The challenge really is how do you standardize systems and processes, because you want the operation to be very efficient and effective and to take into consideration some different challenges that are different rules and obligations you would have in each of the AOCs, for example. So part of one of my objectives in the short term is to standardize systems and processes at the highest common denominator from a rules and safety and security perspective. So then when we operate and load the aircraft, for example, the operators know they follow the exact same steps and the exact same processes. The second example would be from an IT infrastructure perspective. We've multiple instances of our technology that run for each of the different airlines and each of the different business units. And we're right now in the midst of consolidating that into a single unit. So really creating a single standard and system for the network, which will make the fact that we have different AOCs or different business units will become irrelevant to the front of house, irrelevant to the customer. They will all get the benefits. And then in the background, we'll manage the exceptions and the challenges that you would have with having multiple different devices.
As Chief Operations Officer, when you look at the operations of aircraft under different 3 AOCs, what do you think are the pros and cons of having 3 different AOCs?
Well, I think the primary benefit, of course, is that you have different opportunities and different flying rights and you have different connections that you can operate. And so each of the units has its own very specific benefits. Belgium to China is a big market for us, and we've got very specific flying rights on that lane. So we can utilize the aircraft where we need to utilize them best. Malta last week, we started flying our first charter inbound to Malta. We have started Mumbai on the 7th of March, just last week. So we're really expanding the network, using the abilities that each AOC has independent to operate the network. And of course, the original DNA of the company was based on 2 747s transit back and forth between the Middle East and Europe. And now we're going to expand to, by the end of this year, we'll operate 50 frequencies a week. We'll have, almost 18 to Asia, about a similar amount, just slightly less to transatlantic. And then in the European and Middle East region, the balance. So we're starting to build out a real network design, which is going to be very efficient and very effective.
What is your idea about the fleet modernization of the Challenge Group? I think by end of this year, you will have 2 more 767, and then you have 4 777-300 ERs coming into your fleet, which will go for conversion. What is your idea about the fleet modernization for Challenge Group?
Sure. One of my roles now is to take our whole ESG strategy and further develop it. So looking at every single aspect. In the short term, of course, we'll work on the sort of, I would call them always tactical actions that we can take to implement. And then the second phase is really how we develop the network moving forward over the next 10, 15, 20 years to achieve like net zero by 2050. So we're starting to work now in terms of how we build that network, how we're going to replace the aircraft, what's the timeline for it, what's the regulatory environment, what's the customer demand. So we'll look at all aspects and develop a roadmap for the group to achieve that over the next coming years.
What will be one of your biggest challenge in terms of really sweating your assets, like flying 16 hours probably? Is that going to be a big challenge for you?
The network runs really effectively, and you can take two views. The more frequently we operate the aircraft, actually the more reliable it is. We have a Technics business that's managing our maintenance. We've just taken a hangar in Hanover to supplement their capabilities. And in fact, we don't just operate it to our own network, we offer it to a broad range of customers. So really by having an effective Technics team, and we also have developed a materials and logistics organization that are managing our spare parts and our inventories of rotations, everything in the group using AMOS technology. So we're building IT capabilities, we're building technical capabilities, really to keep the aircraft operating as effectively and efficiently as possible.
Besides the 3 airlines that you operate under 3 different AOCs, one of the important business that you have is the cargo handling and the facility in Liège. I had a chance to see the facility like a few weeks back. That's going to be an important facility in terms of cargo handling. You handle a number of airlines and you have an ambitious target for 2024. How are you seeing the potential of your handling business in the future?
The handling business is based at probably the best airport in Europe for e-commerce in terms of how we can operate, when we can operate. We have the horse facility for the live animals. We have a second facility on the far side of the airport now because of the capacity. And then we also have a second line location, which is just off the airport. So we've really built a whole network of infrastructure at the airport, which sets us up for growth. We can take a lot of capacity to expand into. And we also have the second line warehouse as we start to get more into the end-to-end solutions for e-commerce. And we start to look at sortation and clearance and distribution and using our trucking network, which is expanded. So it's really like the hub of our network. So even though we have 3 AOCs, we still have one central hub where nearly every aircraft or package can touch in Liège. So Liège is a critical spot on our network, and we'll do a lot more further development there in Liège over the coming years.
Do you think that you will replicate a Liège model maybe in the US? There was some talk about having something very similar in the North American market.
As I said to you at the start, one of the attractions to join this group is how ambitious it is. Going from 2 aircraft to 4 to 10 and then to 14 and to 18 over a very short period of time over the next 2 to 3 years means that we now have a chance to look at more opportunities and capabilities. If you consider how Liège, the genesis of Liège was based on, having that anchor tenant or product or vertical to operate to. So I think now we have an opportunity to do that in the US, and we also have the opportunity to do it in Asia as the network grows and expands. So it's certainly on the horizon. It's actually one of the missions that's been set for me is to look at how we expand that network and replicate the capabilities that we have in the handling business. So I think that's a really exciting development. It's very early in its sort of genesis in terms of how we're thinking about it, but certainly something that hopefully we'll be talking here again in a couple of years' time and we'll be able to say we've moved forward. So very exciting.
You mentioned about the Tel Aviv, Bombay, Tel Aviv flight on 767. We've seen the freighter landing in Bombay and taking off. Going forward, how do you want to connect Bombay with Liège? Is that a possibility? Probably you would deploy another bigger aircraft, 747?
The way we've started the Indian market, of course, is that we go Mumbai, Tel Aviv, but that we also transit volume into Liège. So we have the connectivity to get to Liège and onwards to the US. This is our first step into the Indian market. I think the next step will be to expand the frequencies and then to look at other markets. As you know, I spent a long time in India. It's a great market to operate in. It's got a lot of challenges and complexity, but it's a growing market. It's a development market. So I think you'll see a lot more of Challenge Group in India over the next couple of years. We're really excited about it.
David, in terms of sustainability, you mentioned about there was some time back Israel had banned flying of the 4-engine 747, but then they retracted. They removed that ban. It is you still operate 747. Going forward, what will be some of your priorities in terms of being sustainable, being net zero, in terms of modernizing your fleet, having much fuel efficient aircraft freighters in your fleet?
Well, I think we're bringing this the 777 in as a next step. And we also then, the challenge with the 747 nose loader is there's nothing yet on the market that's available to sort of replicate it. And it moves a lot of really important technology and equipment for the aviation industry, for the oil and gas industries. So we need to come up with a solution for that. And we'll also then work in terms of the timing for moving aircraft in and out of the network. We have a very detailed plan in terms of, focusing on SAF, focusing on technology, focusing on processes for the pilots and crew, how we taxi in. So we'll work on a lot of the tactical issues. We'll also work on SAF. That's obviously the next step for us, is to work and try and create some capabilities and liaise around that. So I think we have a lot of actions to do, but we really need to develop that holistic plan over the coming years.
When you look at also the cargo volume coming from heightened optimism from the cargo volume coming from e-commerce channels, where do you see that Challenge Group is going to take advantage of the e-commerce sector?
Sure. I mean, you see exponential growth right now in e-commerce. We were just doing a review here at the forum, and Temu has gone from 0% of the market to 7% in a matter of a couple of years. And we're also seeing the e-commerce giants are moving more towards having their own direct freighters, which of course creates a great opportunity for us, which is why we're flying obviously here to Hong Kong and also into CGO with maybe 9-10 frequencies a week. I think the next step for us is we're going to build out our end-to-end capabilities. So one of my missions will be to develop a solution for first mile. But then we have the airline piece, we have the handling business in Liège, we have our trucking company in Liège, and then we're going to infeed it into domestic players predominantly around Europe or postal operators. So we're going to build the pieces that aren't within our own network. We're going to collaborate, develop partnerships to close out those capabilities. There's a lot of great products on the market right now in terms of customs clearance, automation of e-commerce clearance, very high throughput. And the final mile, there's a lot of great domestic players in Europe, in fact, cross-border players obviously as well. So really working to infeed that volume into the networks. So eventually to come up, have this end-to-end solution that we can sell to our customers.
David, such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and it was great to see you. Thanks a lot.